It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our first speaker in this session on water reuse, David Gibson. David Gibson's the Executive Officer of the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board, the regional agency charged with developing and enforcing water quality objectives and implementing plans that will best protect the area's waters, while also recognizing our local complexities in climate, topography, geology, and hydrology. Mr. Gibson has worked for the City of San Diego Water Department as a watershed biologist and as Senior Environmental Scientist and Environmental Program Manager for the San Diego Regional Board. He played an important role in developing the Tijuana River Watershed Vision document and the work of the Tijuana River Valley Recovery Team, both efforts on binational watershed management. He has a Bachelor of Science Degree in biology from San Diego State University. Welcome home. And with that, I'm proud to introduce Mr. David Gibson.
Thank you very much. I'd like to share that besides being a San Diego State alum, very glad for that, this campus gave me the opportunity to start my career in water quality. It was not exactly where I was going. I'm also a trained entomologist, and I had thought I was going to be studying insects for the rest of my life. Instead, I found my way to a water recycling facility, and the rest of it is an interesting story I'll tell you during the reception. San Diego and Tijuana share a number of significant challenges that are not necessarily represented anywhere else in the United States or Mexico. We live in a semi-arid environment, but we live in an environment where it's less than 10 inches of rain down on the coast, but 32 inches of rain up in the mountains. That's close to Seattle rain, but it's not where we need it. The water is up there, not down here. We have very limited groundwater supplies, and they tend to be rather vulnerable. That we're not like some other parts of the state where they have large basins that they can rely upon. And we have both of our communities large and growing populations, and agriculture remains an important part of our community that we want to sustain, but it's a function of available water and the price of water. With these and many other factors in mind, the San Diego Water Board in 2012 began work on a strategic plan, our practical vision. And it should not surprise any of you today that one of the chapters in that is the strategy for attaining a sustainable local water supply. In this interest, the Water Board has a substantial amount of authority to regulate some of the facilities like recycled water plants and ocean discharges, but it has a lot of influence as well in terms of being able to sponsor or support or provide a regulatory pathway of certainty and streamlining that actually attains projects that would otherwise be blocked by regulatory obstacles. The board considered salt and nutrient management plans as an approach to increasing water reuse and revised the groundwater quality objective to ensure that groundwater basins could be used to store recycled water. We also have been interested in stormwater capture and development, and I'm going to touch on this again by the end of the presentation. This is a unique opportunity that we have in California that we really need to use because climate change is changing the math on water affordability, and whereas it may not have penciled out to capture and store stormwater for reuse now, but give me time, 10 to 15 years from now, it's going to more than pencil out. Now's the time to make those kind of investments. Desalination is also part of the approach that we've taken, a portfolio approach in water conservation, but we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about recycled water reuse and the way that that is important to our communities in both countries. California has a long history in recycled water reuse. You may not realize this, but going back all the way to the Golden Gate Park development in the beginning of the Pan American Exposition there, it was recycled water that was used to irrigate it and fill the ponds. It was being used in Pasadena for agricultural uses, and you're probably well aware that in Irvine it was used for agriculture, and then Water Factory 21, which started as a saltwater intrusion project, barrier project, became in effect an indirect potable reuse project. And the city of San Diego and my intersection from San Diego State included a total resource recovery project begun in the 1970s as a way of, in an energy efficient way, being able to produce recycled water that could be reused for potable purposes as well as producing biomass for energy generation and for commercial marketing. They used water hyacinth ponds to treat water to secondary, but that water, the primary purpose of it was to serve as a source for investigation. Can it be used? Can it be treated? Can it be purveyed as a potable water supply? And in that, it was compared against the Colorado River, and I don't think I have to tell you which one won. It is the potable water reuse of recycled water. It was also considered as a live stream discharge to maintain potable water supplies for Camp Pendleton. The municipal water districts of Rancho and Eastern Municipal Water Districts wanted to convey treated wastewater to Camp Pendleton to maintain the minimum flows in the Santa Margarita River. And that was also a project that I became involved in as an entomologist. For potable reuse, we have mostly reached the limit of the purple pipe system, but we now have 29 facilities in our region, over 6,400 use sites, and approximately 52,500 acre feet were produced in 2018. San Diego has been leading the way in terms of reusing this water. As you can see in this photograph, we have actually allowed it to be used for street sweeping, which prior to our practical vision in Chapter 5, the Water Board would not have even conceived as a beneficial reuse of recycled wastewater. It was used primarily for irrigation of golf courses, landscaping, for cooling water, but now we're looking at also reusing it in that way and for recycled water fill stations. And I've been very happy to go to Padre Dam and get my 3 gallons worth too. But the real horizon for us, the real opportunity to make significant reuse of water regionally is in potable reuse. And the public opinion has shifted from when I first worked in recycled water in the 80s and 90s to where we are today. Most of the public is now much more accepting of the reuse of recycled wastewater as a part of the potable supply. Maybe a few of them have had the realization, as I'm sure we all have, that it is all recycled in the end. The outfall for the city of Las Vegas is, you know the joke, 1 mile upstream from the intakes on Lake Mead. So what happens in Vegas does not stay in Vegas. It actually arrived here this morning. Some of it is in my bottle. Well, we now have several programs. The city of San Diego is closest to it. Hopefully by next February or April, the board will actually consider the NPDES permit to release, I'm not going to use the word discharge, release treated wastewater into Miramar Reservoir for potable reuse, 30 million gallons per day. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. The Padre Dam, my district, and Helix Water District are developing an advanced water repurification project, a much smaller version of what the city is doing. That water would go to Lake Jennings. And other districts are working on smaller versions of surface water augmentation and groundwater augmentation, especially. Many of these projects were on the drawing boards 10, 15 years ago. They didn't look like they would pencil out. As I mentioned, the climate change is changing our math, and they are penciling out now. The city of San Diego is right now under construction with the phase 1 of the Pure Water Project, which will convey 30 million gallons of water per day to the Miramar Reservoir to be used at the Miramar Filtration Plant, where they treat 144 million gallons per day and purvey it to Rancho Bernardo, down to La Jolla, and out to Claremont. That would be a substantial portion of the water that is provided to that service area, but that's only phase 1. Phases 2 and 3 will add another 53 million gallons of water and to be stored in San Vicente Reservoir, Murray Reservoir, and Lower Otay Reservoir. And this will provide water supply and water stability during the droughts and during those 3 critical droughts that are going to happen in our geologic future: the earthquake on the San Andreas Fault, or the Elsinore Fault, or the San Jacinto Fault. When we look at local water supplies as only making up maybe 5 to 10% of our supply in a normal year, in an earthquake year, it will be 100% of our supply for a while until we're able to repair the aqueducts. That makes the opportunity to store recycled water in reservoirs all the more attractive and promising for our future. The East County project will produce about 17,000 acre feet per year, about 11 million gallons per day, to be used in Lake Jennings. And I'm going to run you now through a set of pie charts, the point of which is to show that the San Diego region has been leading the way in the portfolio approach that Chair Esquivel mentioned a few moments ago, diversifying supply and increasing reliability. In 1991, this was what water looked like in San Diego. 95% of it came from the Metropolitan Water District, virtually all of that from the Colorado River water. In 2018, this pie chart's a little bit misleading because still most of it comes from the Colorado River, but now it's coming from a couple different sources, different accounts, different persons being paid for it, if you will. But you can now see that desalination is on the market, and we now have groundwater supplies and recycled water greater than we did in 1991. In 2020, next year, in fact, you'll now see the potable reuse projects coming online, and the Metropolitan Water District supply is down to 11%. We're still getting most of it from the Colorado River water, but watch and see what happens with phase 2 of the Pure Water program. Now we're up to 17% of local supply, and the portion of that pie chart coming from the Colorado River water is about 50%, compared to 95% in 1991. And that's what it's going to take in order to provide for local supply and reliability, is diversity of supply. And so how does this concern the border? I'm going to show you another slide. This is water reuse in the safari park, an opportunity to deal with a problem as a resource. So the San Diego Zoological Society built this exhibit space. They're taking wastewater from the exhibits, they're treating it. It's a classroom, but it's also part of their vista. So we're talking right now at the Water Board and other agencies. On December 11th, the board will consider a tentative resolution on the subject of identifying a suite of projects to deal with transboundary flows of waste, including 163 million gallons per day diversion from the Tijuana River. We can treat that and discharge it offshore, as we always have, but why not envision that water as a source? Why not envision a treatment system at the South Bay International Wastewater Plant and the City of San Diego South Bay Water Reclamation Plant produce, say, 25, 50 million gallons of high-quality water and purvey it to Lower Otay Reservoir as planned? Yes, but why not have a second pipeline to Rodriguez Reservoir? Why not share the water? We share it already. Why not share it on that site as well? So there's a real opportunity that we're presented with now in dealing with wastes that are causing significant impacts to human and environmental health, and turn that into a resource to be shared by present and future generations. And so with that, I'd be very glad to take your questions as we go along. Thank you very much for your time and attention.